Well, it's a very huge pleasure to talk to you, Ron, the author fresh off your second book launch, Human Pride, expanding from your first book, Retail Pride. And I want to, I usually start by asking people how they decided to write their book, but in your case, the question must be, how did you decide to write your second book?
Eric, it was maybe longer than I expected. It's been almost 5 years. And to the idea here of like, let's keep the momentum. But Retail Pride had such is still today such a strong following and had such momentum. I didn't really feel the need to do it again. But what I felt was the conversations about retail, which is my entire career, also apply more and more to what's happening in the world, which is about human connection and spaces that we create in job search and in leadership, and all of it doesn't just apply to retail. So it's some of the same ideas of how do you show up with pride, how do you build human connection, but in a more broad sense of really optimizing your human potential versus kind of Retail Pride was about celebrating accidental careers. It's a shift in the conversation to optimizing who you are and how you lead and how you build the life around you.
I really like that phrase, accidental career. I think that's an underappreciated thing. I think most careers are accidental to a huge degree. Is that sort of your story?
In retail, it's really common because there's no, and when I reference retail, you can perceive retail as e-com businesses and wholesale businesses. I think of it as stores. And there's no real education that would say I'm going to be great at running stores. The job is very much like you learn it on the job. You have hopefully great leaders around you. You work for great brands that provide learning and development. So it's very like on the job. And 1 out of 6 people in the US, their first job is in retail. And it turns into 1 out of 4 people in the US work in retail. And so it is this almost accidental, like I started in college or I had a part-time job or somebody knew somebody else. And then all of a sudden it's become this, wow, this is really great. Like I run a multi-million dollar business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an HR manager. I'm a visual merchant. I'm in charge of service. There's this love that builds and commitment around the success of this industry that is pretty unmatched. Then again, we don't ask that anyone comes with any particular college education, and in fact, it skews often underskilled or undereducated that way, and that's a plus. Like that, we look for that of like energy and drive and like just a let's go attitude.
I love that. Okay, so that is the sort of ethos of Retail Pride. Your first book from 5 years ago, and Human Pride. The subtitle is "Optimizing Potential in a Digital Job Market." You couldn't have picked a better moment to publish that book. I mean, that is very much the conversation that I feel like is happening in every business and every dinner table, like right now around the world.
Everywhere, everywhere. And part of it was, I have the pleasure now because of Retail Pride that I get to be on stage and go to a lot of conferences and speak about the importance of human connection. And what I continued to see the last, I'd say 18 months, it really ramped up. Everyone on stage is talking about AI becomes almost a joke of like, how often can you say AI in a 30-minute keynote? And the idea of like, but we're not talking about people. We're still like, we love the shiny object. We love the idea of what AI can do for us, support us, create efficiencies. We love all of that. But the impact on people is becoming more and more clear of, and not necessarily in a positive way. And so leadership today is really leaning even more heavily into human connection. Don't just ramp up the kind of the forms that you need to do or the kind of statistics that you need to build, and because you can do them faster, actually create content more quickly, and then give yourself more time to spend more time with your team, and open up just kind of your calendar in order to create more space to have human conversations. And I don't hear enough of that on stage. I don't hear enough about how we can support people entering the workforce, how career paths are not as linear as they were, how there are new jobs, and as well as, kind of the decline of other jobs. Like it's a reality that's happening, and we have to pay attention to that.
How did this idea grow from sort of seed to book over the past it's usually a couple year journey. What did that look like for you?
So one of the things I've done in addition to kind of growing the speaking business and other parts of being a great author, which is a huge reason and why I'm such a proponent of doing it through Scribe, is I built a retail recruiting company. So part of what's also broken in the industry is how people find work. And that is, again, it's leaning very AI heavy. A lot of first job interviews are AI based questions that just pop up on a screen. There are major brands that have now shifted entirely to first interviews via AI. And so while you're building a recruiting company, particularly in retail, it is about the personality and connection and warmth and energy and drive. You look for all those things, and that often can't be found through ATS, keyword searches, all of the technology that almost blocks you from getting in. So I saw this massive opportunity to help the job seeker and at the same time help the leader. So the book is really, it's two parts plus an extra chapter on optimizing yourself, but half of it's for the job seeker, half of it's for a leader. That was not my goal, to be honest, initially, but I saw the need and the questions that I continued to get about, hey, how do I make a name for myself? How do I continue to lean into what a new career could look like? How has my team is different now. Maybe you've been a leader for 20 years. Today, you've got four generations of people working in the same place. You have this idea of how do I stand out in a world of AI? How do I lead differently? All of that continued to just surface for me. I kept writing about it, and that's what it became. Is this kind of half and half, depending on where you are in your life.
I really love that sort of organic growth, right? Of like you get these questions, you start writing posts, you start answering questions, you adapt your keynote, and then suddenly, suddenly after years of organically answering questions and sort of accumulating knowledge, you see these patterns and you're like, ah, this is how it sort of clicks together into this is where the boundaries of that book are that sort of start to reveal themselves.
It's true. There was actually a whole other part about what other industries could learn from retail because I'm so deep in it. I understand its value, and I've been able to speak at conferences of this is how we that are non-retail of, hey, this is how we do it here, and they're in love with the idea, whether it's coaching, feedback in the moment, creating entrepreneurs, like building business, understanding your P&L, customer experience, like all of that in one idea for any industry is real. But the reality is the parts about leadership and job search became more relevant than the lessons from retail. So I'll take those, 10,000 words and do something else with them because it's good work.
Nothing's wasted. Yeah. So it's
Nothing's
just
wasted. You just, hey, I appreciate the feedback and let's shift it. And, that's what having a good editor as part of your book journey is for.
yeah, it gets so much easier to prune what needs to be pruned when you realize you can just sort of repot it in a new pot rather than you just throw it away forever. I find that to be really helpful. So talk to me a little bit about I think a lot of people aspire to sort of build what you've built, the combination of like your business as an author, your business as a speaker, and this sort of supporting recruiting in retail business. Talk about the interactions between all of those and like the sequence that you sort of see in rhythm that you have as a person sort of trying to push all these balls forward at once.
Yeah. I will tell you, I think some of the timing of releasing a book the end of 2020 here worked to my advantage. And I will share It doesn't mean that it couldn't work today, but most of the conferences became Zoom meetings. And so all of a sudden it's pretty easy to become like an inexperienced keynote speaker on Zoom. It's a really good way to practice. And by the way, none of it, you don't get paid for a while. It's the other reality. You don't just become, a high ticket speaker overnight. It's taken me several years to get here. And so I was quickly, because everyone was looking for new ideas online, trying to recreate, like, how do we do this? How do we share interesting messages from new voices? And so it was also a time when you think about frontline work and essential work, and a lot of retail was essential work. So there was this message of like appreciation and support and pride. And so my timing on retail pride, not unlike human pride, felt really good. And so I was able to then speak often. I was on a lot of podcasts and was able to start to build a business. So, and then it became a book tour, a sponsored book tour from several brands, traveled across the country in an Airstream, hosted events. And so it was also this ability to ask for money, which is hard to do for people of like, hey, in order for me to do this, who do I need to ask? How do I build a business around sponsorship? How do you get sponsorship for a podcast? How do you do it to buy an RV and travel? And so I was able to do that. And that ended now 2 years ago, which is when Human Pride started. So as soon as that tour ended, and I said, okay, now it's time for a new idea. And the speaking then just continued to build podcasting. I hosted 2 of my own shows, and but it takes time. It's taken 5 years to do that, and that's not to scare people, but it doesn't happen overnight when you go from an executive that never really did that on your own, because that's not what you do, to being an entrepreneur and building a business. It definitely took me time, but I'm proud of the work now, and now it's just fun.
Yeah. That's a great place to be. You kind of, you hit that, through the J curve and you're out the other side and now it feels fun and you got the wind at your back. I'm fascinated by this, this book tour, the sponsorship, this Airstream. This feels like a rom-com motif. So to give you some more detail on like how you go from, from lockdowns and Zoom meetings to a sponsored book tour, RV, like this is the dream.
It really was, although there was so much unknown to it, and I was still working full time. So it was, a joint decision between myself and my husband. We lived in New York City. We both had jobs where we needed to be in New York City, both executives. And we both said, after living in New York through COVID, and I've continued to see the success of Retail Pride, we both just said, like, could we sell everything we own and just go on the road? Like, is this a reality? Could we do this? And we both were like, heck yeah, like we could do this, but how? So that, if you think back to 2021, it was really hard to get an RV. All of a sudden, RV
Yeah.
life became so cool. Took a year to get an Airstream. So we were at the dealership in New Jersey. We like went to see them for the first time and like spent 100 grand and bought one. Yet they have to build them, and then all of a sudden because they're all made in the U.S., 100-year-old brand made in the U.S. All of a sudden the factory got COVID and it was 3 months delayed, and like there's just this kind of the obstacles were real. But during that time, it's okay, great. We know this is going to happen. Here's the approximate time. Now it's time to start pitching. And when you do that, you make commitments on timing. Say, well, if one of them was, a POS register system, called KWI. So what events do we want to have in your brand? So the brands that use your technology, let me do some events in there. Let's do some of the podcast guests that are customers of yours. So there was this really collaborative effort to how can I help you while you help me? Trade shows, like I did book signings at trade shows in their booths. How do I drive traffic for them? So it was always, I'm not just taking a check. I'm saying, well, how can I help you? What do you need? And how can we make sure you're getting as much out of this as I am? And so kind of booked out events for an entire year with that, along with podcast guests. And I did all the interviews live in the Airstream, which was also really cool. It's
That's
great,
very
great
cool.
content. It was so much fun, really fun.
Super unique. How many sponsorships does it take? It's sort of those kind of high level. I imagine those obligations sort of add up quickly. How did that come together?
I had 3. 4 was kind of the optimal for me because same if you're announcing, this podcast is sponsored by, a list of 10 is not that interesting. 3 that all 3, so one of them was Spotify, and to be able to then say, this is a Spotify sponsored podcast. So the highest level of content and equipment, and to do all of that really well. And then Ubic, which is an employee centered like store communication platform that's expanding globally. So the 3 of them were very different, and equally relevant to the conversations.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, having them all connected, like those sponsorships help you get into a place to sign and sell books and grow your brand as an author and a speaker. It gets you access maybe to guests that otherwise might be difficult because you've got this sort of connection through a sponsor. And of course, you've got this guaranteed revenue. So you're not having to scramble to sell ads or a certain minimum number of books or anything like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah, speaking of, so one of guest number 4 on the Retail in America podcast was Sarah Jessica Parker. And that was taken because her shoe brand was a customer of one of the sponsors. And so there was this kind of deal behind the scenes of, hey, could we do, so we've actually filmed it with a full crew in front of a live audience of female entrepreneurs. That was her request.
Incredible.
And so there's a video of it, and that particular episode was really about retail. It was her love of New York City and her love of retail, and having a shoe brand and what that has meant to her, and like how to build all of this. So that would never have happened without the sponsorship, because I can't just call her people and say, hey, does she want to be on the show? Would never have happened. But
Episode 4 of your brand new podcast. Yeah.
They're like, who are you and why are you calling me? But to be able to sit there and have, a stack of retail pride, in her store with a full audience, was really special and terrifying at the same time. And but that put a lot of it on the map of say, oh, you're right. Then the level of guest inherently changes. So I'm just a big advocate of like, go big, ask for what you think you need. How can this continue to build a brand for you? And so much of it is timing. We are considering doing it all over again. I love RV life now. It's just, as much as I love Miami, living on the road in campgrounds, all summer sounds like a dream. And so there will be another kind of Human Pride, Your Greatest Potential tour coming up soon, hopefully next year.
Very cool. So you're probably seeking sponsors for that and putting together the pieces?
Seeking sponsors. Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Awesome.
Exactly.
How does the book fit in, like as an author with this kind of ecosystem around you? Like, are you selling books through these trade shows? Are you selling it through as part of your speaking appearance? Do you just trust that when you're on a stage, some percentage of people are going to buy that book? How does that all relate?
Yeah. Great question. So I never sell them. I've never sold them in person at a show. What I ask is that whoever is putting on the event buys X number of books. So they just order them through the process that Scribe sets up. And because me selling them one at a time, with the Stripe link for me is too much work. I'd rather you just buy 100 copies, I'll show up and we'll all sign and take pictures until they're gone. Whatever you need. And speaking engagements, I almost always put it into the contract, for X number of books, preferably everyone in the audience. For retail brands, with my first book, that was an easy sell. I said, give them to them 3 weeks before I'm going to be there, get them to read it. Then when I'm there, then they're like, oh my God, this guy like wrote this book and he knows my business, and speaks my language. And so they're like wanting to get signatures and pictures is a lot of fun. They're really great. And I think this book, as I start to book out speaking engagements, similarly, again, not a retail audience, but we'll ask that they buy books for everyone attending in advance.
When you're approaching a brand with that sort of offer, who's the person that you reach out to? Is this a head of marketing? Is this like an event, internal events person? Is it around a national, like an annual event that somebody's having?
Could be all three or more. Could be through a speaker bureau. Could be through connections that you make. Could be even, this book is so people centric heavy. It could be a head of HR. So like there's no right answer of who's doing it, or they'll say, oh, we want someone different this year, who's got kind of a relevant message. And so that's often why I use platforms like LinkedIn so much, because there are thousands of people who I don't know who may see this content and say, that's interesting. We were just talking about having a meeting or an offsite, even I do small executive team weekend offsites sometimes, and use ideas from either one of these books for these. Jess did one here in Miami, so it could come from anywhere. But as I say with anyone that's writing a book, like once the book launches, that you're just getting started. Like the work still, and I have fun with it, but I know for many people it's also terrifying. You know, either putting yourself on social platforms, putting your book out, but it requires daily work. It really does. Or you are quickly forgotten among many other books that come out every single day.
Yeah, it's one of those productive delusions that like there's a finish line when you publish your book, and you do have to sort of come to terms as you're approaching that finish line with the fact that you are just starting another race, which is continuing to promote the book and keep it relevant and use it and display it and get it into the places and advocate for it. So yeah, it's really there's 3 marathons in there. So that was a wonderful segue because I get a lot of authors who sort of ask like, Ron seems to have this all figured out. What is he doing? How can I do it? What advice does he have? So, that was a good piece of just stay active on your book and sort of buckle up for the long haul. But do you have any other pieces of advice that you'd give to authors who are sort of approaching or have their first book out already?
Yeah, I would say like test and learn new ideas. And so you may be surprised where people gravitate toward the concepts that you write about. So sometimes it is pure like blogging, or writing articles, which are very easy to post on LinkedIn, or having a Substack. Sometimes that's where your audience gravitates. Sometimes it is about quotes or inspirational messages or something that works. For me, that works really well. I can pull a sentence from either book, put it on a post and put it out, and it gets a lot of attention. But it's also people make sure they see you. It's the face, it's the person behind the book. And again, that's uncomfortable for people of you're recording yourself, speaking on video, posting pictures of yourself. I have a lot of peers, especially, my age being older, like I would never put a picture of myself on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I literally do it 3 days a week. So like,
Yeah.
you just got to get over yourself a little bit of like, oh, and then people know who you are and people recognize you and like, oh, retail pride or human pride. Like they get it. So I would say test, learn. There are things I've done that get no response. I'm like, that's interesting. Like they didn't really like that. Practice time of day, practice day of week. Like pretend you are a marketing agency yourself, unless you hired one, which I never did. Scribe helped me initially, several years ago, but I know the drills. But practice ideas. Don't post on Saturday at 5 o'clock. No one will see it. You post on Tuesday at 9 a.m. when people are at work and they're looking at LinkedIn, and I've built a nice Instagram following for the same reason. Like they need to know who you are, and um, get out of your comfort zone a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, remembering that swings are free. You're the only one who knows that your post has no views. Nobody else saw it. you know.
No one saw it, so you can take it down.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but don't let it get in your head about it. I think that that's of like, it doesn't work. Like, you know what? That didn't work. So try something different. Um, and same of like, I can record quick, like 60 seconds saying something about the book that can get a lot of attention. But it same, like everyone's your own worst critic always. And so practice, just practice.
Love it. And that's, it sounds like the things that are working for you are relatively simple things. Take a sentence out of your book, highlight it, take a photo, share it. Doesn't have to be fancy. Doesn't require a huge investment in a marketing agency. Just be disciplined about staying present.
Right. Exactly right. And the long-term payout, again, you may not see anything, but I get messages, DMs on LinkedIn or other platforms, and they'll say, I saw this, several months ago, or are you still doing this? So there's a long tail of from content that you might be surprised. Someone saves it and say, oh, that guy's interesting. I'm just going to save this when we're ready to bring in a speaker or to speak to the team. That's happened quite a bit. So there's not always an immediate gratification from your marketing efforts.
Yeah, going viral, it may not necessarily be the goal. You just want to be known, be steady.
And know what's right for you. I'm not on TikTok, and that's just a choice. I'm a 2-channel Instagram, LinkedIn, but it's actually mostly LinkedIn. The following's double on LinkedIn. I think it's like 28,000. And so I think that's very built. That's not bought. And so you have to know the channel that works for you. And I do see people panicking and trying to put out on 6 different platforms. I don't have that kind of time. I
Spread
don't think
themselves too thin. Yeah.
too thin of like, what works for you? Don't let the peer pressure of someone telling you that you have to be on TikTok change your strategy. It doesn't work for me.
Well, I think it's hopefully inspirational for people to see that you can build a really thriving business on a 5-figure following. If all you see is people with millions and millions of followers, it might seem like a huge gulf, but you can get a few thousand, a few tens of thousand, and that's a very, if it's well targeted, it's well honed, if it's sort of organically built and authentically aligned, then that's a wonderful audience.
I think so too. Yeah, and it's so when I was even preparing for Human Pride, part of the success of books, as you well know, is reviews and pre-readers. So I even like I put it out on LinkedIn of like, hey, I'm looking for people that want to pre-read Human Pride with a responsibility to write a review. And I got several hundred requests. And so I narrowed that down, did some homework. So I ended up with about 100 pre-readers, which came into like 20 pretty early reviews on day one, which always helps. And but it kind of, I sourced the audience versus sending it to my friends and family. I'm not even sure they've finished the book yet. Most of these people, I was having this conversation with my best friend yesterday, who was asking me questions that I said, clearly you haven't finished reading my book because it's all in there. But other people that are fans of you, of like, I'd love to, like, what can I do to help you, Ron? Like, so your audience helps you, and when you need help too, or you put surveys out, that there are things that I think become this reciprocal, well-meaning intention to social media that is, I think, misunderstood a little bit.
Well, and it's I mean, how fun that like if somebody you follow gives you a chance to see their book early and get to give feedback. Like I've got a few of those requests over the years, and it's always like exciting and rewarding. It feels like a peek behind the curtain. And you do genuinely want to be helpful. And it's a great playbook for getting a really solid set of early reviews, authentic, thorough early reviews. Cause you're exactly right. Those first couple dozen reviews on your launch day or launch week matter a ton for anybody else who ever looks at it to see that there's, credibility here. And you were, I mean, I wanted to ask sort of what what you changed between your first and your second book launches, because you were everywhere for like the 2 weeks. I mean, we're still only like a few weeks from your book launch, but I feel like it was everywhere on LinkedIn. Tons of energy, tons of excitement. What did you do as a sort of sophomore author that you didn't know to do the first time around?
I think it was even more of a build up, building more content in advance of it. Here are quotes from the book. Here are things that I'm doing. Here's the message that it is. So there was a lot. I did a lot of build up to it, and used. I think what the beauty of books and book covers is you're building a brand also for the book around it. And so it's imagery, it's color, it's language, it's tone. There's consistency to it. I get a lot of that feedback of like, it's very clear what your brand is. And that means a lot. And again, you can do it all pretty easily on much of the software that's out there. And so low effort, low dollars spent, high return. It's commitment and consistency is doing it. So I was, you're right, Eric, more aggressive a little earlier on. Didn't know that I needed that the first time, and then continued the momentum. And I'll you know, it will slow down some, but I will be consistent with it, for the next year probably.
Could we one more level of sort of detail here? What is early? Is it 3 months before? Is it 6 months before? 9 months? And what are some of the tools that you use specifically?
Sure. So yeah, so I would say at least 6 months teasing it, even like when I started it, or in order to finish the book, one of the things I had to do was go dark on social. So as much as I'm a proponent of it, I also understand its distraction and the time it takes. So I posted of like, I think it was July and August last year, said, I'm going dark. And so and I'm like, because I'm working on this book, like, and deleted the apps and was dark as when I was writing. I can't do it any other way. And so that almost like it created this excitement of like when I came back, it's like, how did it go? What did you do? And so that was August, September, October, November. By the end of 2024, I was pretty much done. I turned it in the end of the year for first draft. So that I would say teasing it at 6, becoming more intentional at 3, and then month out, it's building a subscriber list. So we're sending out like every 2, 3 weeks an email, not all the time. A few thousand people subscribe. Like let's more and more just continue to build some momentum so that they were ready. So tools wise, I use Canva, and you can drop in all of your assets, drop in things from your book cover, help build some art around it. And then Canva just helps you build more and more. And it can be simple as photography, quotes, art. I posted some clips from reviews since then, just using Canva. So simple, inexpensive, ready to go.
I love that. Yeah, this one author that we published earlier this year, Aaron Stupel, who's got a habit. He will clip every 1-star review from his Amazon page and write like an extremely thoughtful response to the 1-star reviews, and he has a
That's great.
whole thread of them. And I thought that's just such a great way to sort of turn lemons into lemonade.
Yeah. Or appreciate the feedback so much too, of like that it didn't break through. I also, one other thing I forgot to say, part of the Goodreads, I didn't really understand Goodreads, I think the first time around, and the giveaways and the kind of optimizing that. So I was posting about Goodreads and make sure you enter the 100 free copies on launch day. I think there were close to 500 people that entered for the 100 books. And so like that feels good. Like you're building momentum, and I don't know who got those 100 books, but I'm hoping that some of those show up as reviews.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hope. Some of it is just try to get your book as much surface area as you can. We see if you could get that first couple hundred or couple thousand copies out there, that starts the word of mouth sort of snowball going. And and gives you those first couple dozen reviews so that when somebody else lands on your Amazon page, it does look like there's real action, there's real excitement, there's people reading and loving this book, and that snowball keeps rolling. But you gotta do a little work to get some mass on it first so that it has momentum.
You really do. And again, I would just say practice, test, learn, try. There's nothing that's going to say this hits exactly right for every person. But and I'm such a LinkedIn advocate in general. When I speak to students, college students, and like, you have a billion users globally. You have access to people that I certainly didn't have when I was in college or starting my career. Like, you have all the answers to the test. And if you're not building your network early, then you've wasted the opportunity. Again, high return, low cost resource here. And um, I think there's probably a missed opportunity for many people of not capitalizing on the opportunities on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it doesn't cost much to post, and just throw your hat in the ring and see what the universe perks up at.
It's true. It's
Um,
true.
it might be early for human pride, but maybe not. Has anything interesting or unexpected happened as a result of having this book out in the world?
The first that's come through quickly is that the the recommendation that this book become more like for high school kids, high
Ah,
school students, and or like early college, um, because in today's idea, or as people are entering the workforce, I do think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknown. How do I compete? How do I know what's going to be launched tomorrow from a new AI platform? None of us know. None of us can predict how this is going to evolve. But what we know is it, being able to tell your story early in life helps you then get the internship, get the first jobs, maybe get into college. And so a lot of what's in Human Pride is how to tell your story. And when I'm in college, so when I'm speaking to college students, I'll ask them, a few from the audience, like, tell me how you introduce yourself. How do you start with your story? And they really struggle with this. And I said, well, then let's practice. Where are you from? Why did you choose to go to school here? What do you expect to learn? Who are some of your inspirations? So start to like put the pieces of that puzzle together early. And so the fact that already it's coming back as saying, I think this is for students, has been unexpected for sure. And I'm going to lean into that and to see, can this be a book for in college libraries or in different classes? So we'll see. But that's a new one, and I think a fun one.
yeah, I love that. I mean, it's such a good example of, even the artists sometimes can't predict how their work will be interpreted, used, or who will find it helpful. But once you kind of take that leap and put something out into the world, people start adapting it for their own purposes, and that could be so rewarding in itself.
It is, and the reviews have been, again, I think as an artist, one of the best practices, which I fully agree with from you and Scribe, is don't share this with everyone on your writing journey. Like, too many ideas in your head, too much feedback, and I take that to be very true. So literally, no one had read this book, and so there is this sense of like, what are people going to say? Like, you are an artist at a show saying, will people buy this? Will they like this? And the fact that the reviews, I think that there's a quality and a length. Like, it's not just like great book, exclamation point, 5 stars. Like, they're writing paragraphs in there. That that says a lot to me.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's nothing better than getting some of those DMs or emails or reviews that is like not just exactly like you said, not just great book, but here's how I applied the ideas in this book and changed my life as a result, and that's incredible. It's a great feeling. It's and good on the reader for picking up a gem and putting it to work.
yeah, yeah. I hope so. Thank you.
That's very cool. Let's project and dream a little bit. 2 or 3 years out, what does it look like if Human Pride absolutely sort of finds its mark and this book sort of evolves and the pieces all fall into place for you as in your ideal state over the next couple of years?
So number one would be continue to build a speaking business. And I'm launching some of the other tools. I just had my like professional reel done, website about to launch, the whole, all of those pieces. So building that to be an even more important speaker across industries. So for the other piece of this would be, this is not just a retail book. This is for every industry that has leaders and people and job search, which is everyone. And so the fear that I know is existing in people's mind right now about the future of work, this is very much a calming message, so that it, to answer your question, that it translates across the industry, and that I have the opportunity to share that. And then the last one would be another Airstream book tour. That would be, yeah, that would be the thing that makes it even bigger and better this time. RV life is a little bit of same. Like you kind of learn it on the job. No, there's only so many YouTube videos you can watch of like, shit, I had no idea, that this was so hard, or, it's not I would say it's a test of every relationship in your life to live in 180 square feet, and that every 4 days is a new city, and you're trying to figure out how to set up life and grocery shop and work and podcast all at the same time. It's not easy, but boy, is it fun.
Yeah, that's what an adventure. And I imagine we can follow this all happening, unfolding live on your Instagram.
It's true. Instagram and probably LinkedIn. Probably both. Yeah, LinkedIn, or I'm sorry, Instagram is at Retail Pride. Yeah, so you can't miss it.
This is be a very fun thing to follow. I imagine you'll set a trend in Airstream book event journeys.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope
Um,
so.
what a cool thing. Well, thank you so much for sharing like all of your hard-won wisdom. I think you're forging down a path that a lot of people are eager to follow and have a lot to learn from. Sort of what you figured out and the example you set here. It's a huge pleasure to talk. And is there anywhere, so that Retail Pride, Ron Thurston on LinkedIn, anywhere else you'd send people to sort of follow along and see the playbook that you've got in action?
Sure. It'll be at ronthurston.com shortly. So those three: Instagram at Retail Pride, LinkedIn, and ronthurston.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing everything you've earned.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you for Scribe and all the work that you do, and helping people realize their dreams, at any point in their life. I think it's powerful to say, I wrote my first book at 55. I'm about to turn 61. Like it's not too late to say, wow, like I have a lot of life experience. It's time to share that with the world. So no matter where you are in life, that it's the right time.
That's fantastic. I will be quoting you often with that. It's a huge pleasure to play a role in facilitating that that function for people. It's so important to teach what you know, and if we can help more people do it by just removing the friction, that's enormously rewarding. So thank you for being such a model author for us, and being willing to share the good word.
Pleasure. Thank you, Eric.